Hello everybody, my name is Rich Klusek.
And I'm Scott Parker. On our last video, we talked about the guiding principles that are within the Legacy Leesburg Town Plan.
This time we're going to talk about some specific policies and strategies, as well as a couple of maps that are in the document.
When talking about the goals and strategies of the plan, when you look at the plan, you're going to see a lot there. But none of these goals and strategies are necessarily mutually exclusive from one another.
We're going to give you some highlights of some of those goals and strategies while we talk about the land use initiatives map that's in the plan. Keep in mind that we're only scratching the surface. There's a lot more to these goals and strategies than we're able to cover in this video. But again, first let's talk about those land use initiatives.
There are two key maps in the town plan. One of them has land use initiatives and the other has character areas. The land use initiatives are places to preserve, places to transform, places to enhance, and places to strengthen.
Places to preserve. Things like the setting that we are here now.
We're in a park, we're in Isaac Walton Park. This is exactly the kinds of places that you see in green on the map, places that are labeled as places to preserve.
And as you can see in the background, while this is a beautiful setting to preserve, in the distance you will see Catoctin Circle, part of the Crescent Design District, part of what we're talking about when we say transform.
Right, when we say a place to transform, we're talking about creating some of that new mixed-use housing that we've been talking about. An example of a place to strengthen is the Old and Historic District. We don't want to be making many changes in the Old and Historic District at all. Instead, we just want to give that area, which is really the heart of Leesburg, more strength.
And places to enhance. Existing neighborhoods that provide vitality and the basis for the community.
A lot of the neighborhoods that the residents of Leesburg live in right now are places to enhance. That doesn't necessarily mean that things are changing there. Things in those neighborhoods might be just fine. But there's probably always a little bit of room for improvement. Things like constructing a new sidewalk, adding a resource or amenity to that neighborhood, providing a new trail connection, things of that sort. So that's what we mean when we say places to enhance.
So the very first goal in the plan is goal 1.1. It says, put the building blocks of authenticity and character to work. And what that really does is emphasize the importance of historic preservation and recognizing the importance of downtown Leesburg and the Old and Historic District. And it focuses on the desire to preserve that architectural character.
So right now, I'm standing in downtown Leesburg. This area is designated on the Land Use Initiatives map as an area to strengthen. What that means, first of all, is preserving the architectural character of the buildings you see in the downtown area, but also identifying opportunities, just as the name would imply, to strengthen this area. Things like improving parking conditions, perhaps, or better wayfinding signage. But it also means providing some opportunities for small infill development, just like you see behind me with the gray building that was recently constructed. This is all infill development, and if done correctly, the plan recognizes the fact that these are things that can actually strengthen the downtown community. And what's taking place behind me with the new construction is another example of what can happen under strengthen. This is the site of the old battery warehouse. That site was, in many respects, dilapidated and falling apart, and arguably it didn't really do a lot to contribute to the character of Leesburg from an architectural standpoint or from a standpoint of community amenities and creating the walkable environment that many of our residents spoke so fondly about. So you have a new business that just went in, there's a new coffee shop. You also see the plaza right here, or the pavilion as you might want to call it. There's also some new housing opportunities. And as you can see with the sign, this project, even though it's still very new and still under construction, the sign indicates that the project is 90% sold out. That's just another example of the fact that many people really do want to live in neighborhoods like this. So when we talk strengthen, we're making sure that we can maintain the character of Leesburg through architecture and the general environment and provide new places for people to visit.
Another goal speaks to enhancing existing neighborhoods. And one of the ways to implement that goal is to have future efforts to reach out to the communities throughout Leesburg and make sure that the town fully understands the wants and the needs of that community and identifies the ability to make small projects like sidewalk improvements, like improvements to parks, to make those neighborhoods better.
So we're here in the Fox Ridge neighborhood, in Fox Ridge Park specifically. This neighborhood was part of the early building boom that took place in the 1980s. So when we look at a neighborhood like this is shown on the town plan as a place to enhance. That means the plan doesn't contemplate any sort of major changes or overhauls to this neighborhood. You've got a great park, you've got a great facility. We're surrounded by some well-established housing.
Yes, some of the neighborhoods, even from the 80s, don't have these types of amenities, and that's what enhance means. It doesn't mean change, it means enhance. Take what's already a viable neighborhood, a contributing neighborhood, and trying to incorporate some of the amenities, such as we're standing in front of here, in order to increase the quality of life of those particular neighborhoods as we move forward.
This is another example of a gathering space, the kinds of things that the community really wanted to see more of.
And made it very clear that was very important to them during the public input portion of the plan development.
The plan doesn't contemplate making any sort of major changes to this. But certainly, if you look around the neighborhood, you would find that there are places where some small improvements can be made. Maybe it's extending a piece of sidewalk infrastructure. Maybe it's installing a new crosswalk or putting in a bike lane. These are all examples of things that can be done to enhance a neighborhood.
When we talk about places to enhance, this is a prime example right here. Now, there's nothing on the books or anything of this nature, but you notice there's a multi-use path on the other side of the street. But we're on one side of Fox Ridge Park. We have another park down here. There's no sidewalk connection between it.
And as we've been saying throughout this video series, the plan obviously puts a lot of focus on increasing pedestrian mobility and improving walkability throughout the town.
It's a lot about moving people and not just cars.
So right now, I'm standing at the corner of South King Street and Catoctin Circle. And this area is an area that's designated as a place to transform. That means a lot of things. It means, for example, potentially taking some of the older strip retail behind me and converting that into a new mixed-use walkable neighborhood. But it could also mean things like making pedestrian improvements to enhance the connectivity and pedestrian environment. So for example, the crosswalk that you see behind me does allow for pedestrian connectivity, but you end up being forced to cross 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so lanes of traffic, and that's actually pretty difficult for a pedestrian, and it's not very comfortable. So one way of addressing that, for example, might be to install a median or a pedestrian refuge in the center of that road. That's one way that we can, for example, transform this road to make it more pedestrian friendly. So when we talk about a place like this, like Fox Ridge Park, this is an example of the kinds of places that people in the community want to see more of. The problem is that the town is largely built out. You don't see a lot of vacant land and open space to create fields like you see here. The only real solution to get more open spaces like this is through redevelopment activities, where we might, for example, want to proffer or have applicants proffer to construct new open spaces. So it's through those redevelopment efforts that we actually gain open space. In a lot of instances, people see development as taking away open space, but done right, we can create new open spaces for the community.
And as we've stated, open space was very important to just about everybody, as the dot on the map exercise indicated. Everybody wants open space. I know it sounds like planner speak, but there's different kinds of open space. What we have behind us is considered active open space, where you have ball fields and it's usable, but there's also passive open space, natural areas that are left for stormwater management, flora, fauna, etc. And there's a place for all of it, and there's a desire for all of it, and that's where we were talking about the redevelopment opportunities, provide the opportunities for all kinds of open space.
Another important goal of the town plan: manage growth and change to preserve and enhance community. This recognizes that growth and change is going to come to our town, but that growth and change needs to preserve and enhance the character of the community and what makes Leesburg Leesburg, such as, if we are going to have growth, provide amenities for existing residential neighborhoods and residents at large.
So I'm standing in one of the shopping centers along East Market Street. This area is designated as a place to transform. So what that means is that the plan contemplates for the potential to eventually redevelop areas like this into a new mixed-use environment. What that means is that you might see new buildings, but you would also see new uses and new amenities for the community. Things like parks. The plan actually speaks specifically to a performing arts center and other things like that that would be a benefit to the residents living here and living elsewhere in Leesburg. Now, we don't expect any sort of redevelopment activity to happen overnight. It probably won't happen for a while, and I expect that these storefronts will be filled long before any sort of true redevelopment activity occurs. But eventually, as the shopping center continues to age, we may want to contemplate the potential to redevelop areas like this and to create something new. So what the plan does is think about what that something new might look like and how that something new might benefit the residents of Leesburg in the future.
Goals in the plan also speak to reducing energy use, protecting and enhancing surface water quality throughout the town, and preserving and protecting the town's tree canopy, and to the extent possible, enhancing that tree canopy and providing new street trees throughout the town.
I'm walking along East Market Street in Leesburg, and this is another example of one of the places where there might be potential to have some pedestrian improvements. Yes, there is a sidewalk, and yes, it's possible to walk along this road, but it's not necessarily the most comfortable experience. As these cars are driving by, I feel like I could almost reach out and touch one of them. I also don't necessarily have anything to my other side that really engages the pedestrian. One of the ways to improve a situation like this might be, for example, to install a landscape strip with trees or grass along my right side to provide somewhat of a buffer between the cars and trucks driving by and the pedestrians. In the spirit of creating a place to transform, there might also be an opportunity to create uses or buildings along the left side of the road that better engage the pedestrian. On the other hand, if you look at conditions just up the road, you can see how a much wider sidewalk exists here and how you have that little bit of a grass strip. Small improvements like this can actually make a really big difference for enhancing pedestrian comfort. One example that you can see here is along Edwards Ferry Road. This photo rendering shows how simply installing that landscape strip and trees can improve the visual quality of that road and also provide that buffer for pedestrians to make it a more enjoyable walking experience.
Now that we've gone through the land use initiatives and some of the goals, I also wanted to highlight the character areas map that's in the plan. We don't really have time to get into these categories in detail, but I did want to point out that these character areas essentially serve as the new land use designations for the town plan in the future. They speak to characters like residential or like business and industrial or downtown. Each of those areas are envisioned in the future to have a distinct character, and this map speaks to some of those characters. If you go into the actual plan text, you'll be able to see the details of what these character areas actually mean and how they're differentiated from one another. The last thing I want to mention is that at the end of the plan document, you have a series of focus area studies. These focus area studies put the goals and strategies throughout the plan document into action and create sketches to show what future redevelopment efforts, for example, might look like. These sketches show things like incorporating new parks, incorporating a performing arts center for the town, which was one of the areas where we received a lot of feedback from the community. These sketches don't dictate how the areas have to develop, but they provide concepts and provide things to consider when redevelopment does occur in the future.
As always, thank you for watching. We have one more video left in this series.
That video is going to be talking about ways to measure positive change in the future.
So one more time, we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching.